So let's start with IIS. Let's show you how to deploy a site on a website. Now, for all .NET web applications, right? So we'll be using IIS, which is Internet Information Services, right? Which is also called as a web server, right? Web server provided by Microsoft, and IIS runs only on Windows machines, right? It can be a server, it can be a workstation, or it can be your later version of Windows now, right? So it will actually work on any platform which is on Windows operating system, right? So let's understand how this works. So mainly we have few things, few main topics to understand about IIS. The first one is how to install IIS, right? Installation of IIS, let's see, fine. And then we'll have to see how to set up an application pool. Now, what exactly is the application pool and how to set up that, let's see. And then set up site node, right? And then once you set up site node, so here itself you can actually set it. So I mean, this is something if you are in an intranet, right? You may have to set ports for your sites, but if you have multiple sites, but by default, right, you can set one port for one service. If your service is consuming any port, right, of your server of your machine, right, you can't use same port for any other services because it will be locked, right? And by default, in websites, right, if you deploy any site on 80 port, 80 port is a default port for any server. If any requests come to your site without any port convention, now we already know that how the port works. Let me run this application. We have this application, right? So you can see this is a port, right? You have a local host, right, which is local. When I say local host, which is this is actually looking at the local my local machine, right? Either you can have a local host or you can also go through IP. Let me show you IP parts here. Let's say, so let me just go to IP config, or let me take a host name probably. So when you go to host name, right, it will actually give you the name which you set. Whenever you are installing your operating system, right, whatever name you provide will be your host name. This is a machine name basically, right? So sometimes you can actually keep this machine name as a domain name too. So in here, localhost, let me give this machine name and host, or maybe this is machine name is Srinath. Okay. In this port. If you take your host name and browse on, it will actually give you the details. Or let me go to IPconfig once, where let's say you have your IPv address. It's for this. Anyway, this is a dynamic one, not static. We'll use our IP. Okay, maybe it is not reducing, but if you use your IP, or if you use, because in my registry, I'll have to change the meaning of localhost to the host name which it has to point and this. But anyways, it's my system's configurations anyways. But normally you can actually try it in our machine. You can actually go with the IP, or you can actually go with the configuration of your host name, right? It should be able to keep, right? Now, the same thing you can actually deploy on our IIS, this site, right? So we have already seen the IIS part before, which is in our properties of our project, right? You can go to web. So in web, you have an option of here you can see use local. Anyways, as of now, I think it is already using this local IIS web server, right, in on this port. Right, when I say on this port, which means this port will be always logged whenever this service is running. Right, so whenever I start this site, right, so this port will be logged. Right, and whenever I stop this server, which is my local server, right, then this port will be automatically freed up, and any other application can use this one. Right, so that is a port concept. Now by default, if you don't mention any port, right, then which means it is actually looking for 80 port. That is your 80 port is something which is a default port. We normally call this as a default port. That's the reason why in any machine, right, if you want to set up any site where you don't have to mention port, right, so deploy your site on 80 port, right, then it will automatically serve your site by just domain. Right? So, but in your intranet sites, right, if you're working in a company and if you're developing something in intranet, and let's say for multiple tools or multiple websites, right, you have a single server to deploy, then obviously you will deploy a single server in multiple ports, and you will be providing your URL including with the port, right? And how can we include that port? You will have your protocol, which is HTTP, let's say, and you have your domain name. It can be your IP or it can be your host name. Let's say your host name or your host name set your machine is some abc.com or something, right? And then if you are deploying in some other port, right, then you have to mention. I'll show you a way to mention this port amount. Don't worry. Okay, while deploying, I'll show you this. But by default, whenever you are creating any project, right, it will actually search for a free port and it will actually assign that port to your for your development server. Right? Now here you can actually mention some port, let's say, right? And then you can actually serve some page. Let's say you have home.ls, right? Then it will serve. Now this is how you can actually provide your site URL to guys if you are using in your intranet and if you are actually loading more than one site in your server, because more than one site can't access the same AD port because all the sites will be running on a same IIS service. Right? So that is how it works. And now, this is something which is set up of IIS, but even before that we have to understand how to publish your site. Publishing site is important because you can't actually expose a complete code to your IIS server. Instead, what we can do is you can actually publish your site. The publishing your site is like building and getting the actual output and putting in a folder which can be mapped to your any one of the sites. Right now, so by default, if you go to for publishing, right, let me show you how to publish a site. So let's say this web_master is the one which is my main website to publish. You can right click on the site and you have an option for publishing, or you can go to your build and you can see you will have an option of publish your master. So click on that. Now you can see I already have I gave one folder here to publish basically, and I was using it, and you can see, let me just delete all. Now I'm using something called this one. I gave one path here, right, where I have. Otherwise, if you are actually deploying any of your site for first time for publishing, you will get this page which is profile, and you will not have any profiles. Then you can directly create a new profile, right? Give some name, and whenever you give some name, it will load that and click on next. Now it will ask. Normally, it will actually select this web deploy, right? So if you have anything in a remote, you can actually use this, or as I have all the code in file system, right, I have to move my code to file system, right, that you can give that path wherever you want to deploy, right, and click on publish. When you click on publish, you can see it will build your application and then it will publish in your this file. Go back to your folder. Now you can see this is your published code, right, where you have your pages, you have your all the main folders required, configurations required, right? Sitemap required and everything. So this is your published code. Now, so now here you can actually give your published code to any folder as you want, right? But I can actually keep some part where so these are my main binaries. So if you remember in our first class that we were saying you have to place your code or all web pages in one folder where you can actually give the path to your web server, which is IIS web server, where IIS web server will actually find your resources in this folder, right? So that's what is this folder. Now, so before actually going to the deployment part, let's see how to install your IIS. So in my machine, the IIS is already installed, but I'll show you from where you can actually start installing your IIS. Right? Now, for that, you can actually go to control panel. Now we have programs and features. See, for installing your IIS, right? So this is your, when I say installing your IIS, now this is not actually installing, this is switching on or enabling your feature, enabling your IIS feature in your server. That is a installing this, right? And normally we will have many features which will be in a switch off mode in your IIS. Sorry, in your Windows machines. So in order to check that, you can always go to program and features, and we have here at left hand side you can see laptop, you can see turn Windows features on and off. Click on that. When you click, you will get a main window here. Now this will track all the features, all the main features like IIS, right, or some third party main components. If I install it, will actually give all the list of your features, right? And from here you can actually select the feature which you want to install, right? So we'll be selecting our Internet Information Services, right? And when you click on OK, right, what it will do, it will start, it will actually start installing your IIS, which means it will have a setup ready, but it will not be enabled by default because everyone will not be using IIS. IIS is something which is more related to more related to developers, right? If someone who is a business analyst or who is a chartered accountant, right, he don't need he don't need this internet information services to be enabled, right? So in that case, he don't have to do that. So here, that's the reason why based on different feature you select, right? So few things will be enabled. Now you can see these are all the my Windows features which I can actually switch off. When I say switch off, you can actually uninstall from your machine and switch on again to. Now among them you can see few things like Internet Explorer. You can see this will always be switched on. If you want to completely disable your Internet Explorer, you can actually switch this. Because from your program and features, right, you can't uninstall your Internet Explorer. At least you have to keep one feature on. At least you have to keep one version of your Internet Explorer enabled. Either you can upgrade your Internet Explorer, or you can also downgrade your Internet Explorer. But to switch off that, you can actually you can do this one. Same way, you can see there are frameworks, there are internet. We will come back to this one, which is IIS, Internet Information Services. Right? You can see there is Telnet services. Right? You have TFTP, you have gaming, you have many. Now let's come to IIS. So in IIS, right, you have a few main servers. You can use your server in different ways. You can use the server as a FTP server. You can use the server as a actual web, web surfing server, or you can use this IIS as a server farm. When I say server farm, which means you can use this as a reverse proxy server, right? Or you can use this server to, just to reroute without server farm also, just to reroute. Take it as a web serving, but to reroute into some other reward servers, right? You can use something. So based on the feature you're looking for, right, you can enable them. As of now, you can see FTP server is switched off because I don't want my FTP protocol to be enabled in my server because I won't be using this as a FTP server. But you can see in my www services, right, I have many things enabled. and even in your web management tools, right? Now you can see in your web management, I'm actually using my management console. This is the only feature enabled, but let's see this one. Now here you have many. So when you select this, right, select this, select this part. Now you can see whatever is needed for this application development feature will be enabled. Now you can actually go through. Now here mainly what I am looking here is if you need a redirection. That's what I'm saying. If you are always this node of service IIS is mainly used for redirection, then you can actually select this. Otherwise, your HTTP and see you can see directory browsing, whatever you enable here, right? All these features will be showing up in your IIS dashboard. I'll show you what is IIS dashboard, main dashboard, and it all depends on what exactly you are actually selecting. Now you can see I'm selecting CGI, ASP.NET, right? Based on this, it will actually select the dependent. Let's say I'm selecting even a ASP script, server side includes and everything, right? And let's say I'm selecting even HTTP direction also, right? Now this is my tool, and now like can actually go here. If you are actually doing logging part, it will help you in diagnosing and logging. And performance, anyways, static content compression is enough. And security part, right? It will no, you can actually use certificate mapping. So whenever you see certificate mapping and order, let me just select this, or maybe I can show you something. Certificate mapping, let me say basic authentication. So security part will actually see authentications and authorizations part, but you can also enable them from IIS. Let me select these two. Now you can see apart from my IIS features which I've already enabled, I'm actually enabling something more, right? Something more over here. Which means when I click on OK, right, it will actually start installing this. Click on OK. Now you can see it will actually start installing these features, right? And these features need to be installed in a machine. So if you are actually installing your IIS for the first time, it may take some time for sure. But if your processor and RAM are good enough for the version of your Windows you're using, this may complete fast. But it's going to take at least few minutes, I would say, right? So you have to bear, and once you are done with the enablement, right? I mean, your features you have actually installed it. Better to restart your machine, but as of now, I'm not going to do that anyways because I've already installed my IIS, but I'm actually enabling some features. Sorry, right? So once you are doing it, try to restart your machine and then try to use your IIS. So here it's going to take some time to install it, right? Close it, right? It may cause corruption of some of the services. So now it is almost done. So once it is done, we'll actually open up our IIS console, and I'll show you different things. Now this is something which is a installation part of. Now I've enabled my IIS feature in my machines. Right now I can use this IIS to deploy my application. So once this complete installation is done, select it install. Let me show you something. So here in your C drive, right? In your C drive, you'll actually get one new folder called INET, right? Internet Publisher. Now, this is a folder which will be created. If you haven't enabled your IIS, right, you may not find this INET, right? So your INET is the main folder which gets enabled whenever you install your IIS, right? So here you will get a INET folder when installed here. Right now, this folder contains subfolders where your www root is the one where we are going to actually map the site, right? So it will contain some folders. Don't worry about it. Now, whatever you have deployed here, right? Whatever code you have deployed, right? You can actually use this code to deploy a site. Let's say I'm gonna create some site called let me say my site here. Right here you can actually place your publish code. Now this is something where I mean in general we deploy sites in this path. You see INET pub wherever you have installed your wherever your INET pub get enabled, and you have www root, and in www root I created one directory called my site, and then I have my things done. Now here what you can do is you can actually publish your site from next point on. You can publish your site directly there. How? Right click on this, again click on publish, and now you don't want to use this, let's say, then you can always go to profile back, and let's say you have a new profile. Let's say this is your my site profile. Click on OK. Now you can see it will go to connection. Now go and select file system and the path from my site and click on publish. Whenever you publish it, right, now you can see it will actually remove things, and it will create your directory again. Like let's say I'm just removing my site items here. Go back, rebuild your site. Always remember, before publishing your site, always make sure there are no design time errors in your site. Right, so I just republished my solution. That's right. So my project will get rebuilt, and all the libraries will be it will generate the latest libraries for my site. My rebuild is done. Now let's go to build and publish my webmaster. Click on this. Yes, I want to publish in this my site. Click on publish. Now you can see as soon as publish, all your files, main files, whatever you want for your site will be published here. Now this part is important, right? Where we are actually mapping our site publish codes in the in INET root and one of the folder site here. Fine. Now let's go to let me exit this. So now let's go to the Internet console. Let me open up my IIS Internet console. So to open IIS console, right, you have a command. So go to run. Right here you have a command called INET manager, which is INET mgr, Internet manager. Right, select that and click on OK. Now this will open your IIS manager console for the first time. I mean, if you have installed, always try to restart your machine so that your services will be reset and your IIS will be enabled. Now you can see this is my IIS. Now this is called as your IIS manager, which is Internet Information Services Manager. Now the shortcut, if you open from run, is your INET mgr, which is your INET manager. Right. Now here you can see whatever resources you have selected. Now this is something which is your main dashboard, I would say. Right, home dashboard. Now this is your main node, which you can see this is my server name, which is Srinath Vayavu. Right, you can see where as soon as I mouse over, it will actually give me HTTP localhost, because it is my main server, which is my localhost. And if you expand it, right, you will get to see different things here, and you have something called site list. As of now, I don't have anything here because I've deleted almost all the different sites here to keep it clean. Right now, in this, as soon as you select this, right, you will get dashboard things here. If you remember, we have selected CGI to install, right, and we have selected something called HTTP redirect, right. Our mapping you have selected, directory browsing you have selected, right, and we had, I mean, whatever features you have selected there, right. See, in ASP.NET folder you have selected so many things, and it actually got installed, right. You can also uninstall. You can actually go back, whatever feature you don't want to enable, you can always go back and uncheck it. Now this is something which I mean. I'm sorry, features. So in here, if you don't want anything, right, make sure you are sure about uninstalling it, because if you have already some services running and if you uninstall, right, it may hit your applications be running out here, right? Now let's say if I uncheck this HTTP direction, you can see here you have your HTTP direction, which is this, right? If you uncheck this service will be disabled, which means that this service will be removed from the console, and if you are actually using this service, right, then it may hit your existing sites, right? So make sure you're actually working on this in the right way. Fine. Same way in your your security purpose, right? Sometimes you may have to enable your security. I'll show you how to actually enable that too, right, in here. Now the first thing is, you can see this is your server dashboard where you can see everything. Now immediately the next thing is your application pools. That if you remember, we're done with installation, we're done with showing up your console. Now let's see what is an application pool. Now you can see here your application pool is nothing but this is like a pipeline which connects to the version you have in your machine to the site node. Now you may have different versions installed, right? Obviously we know that we can install .NET version side by side, right? You can have 2 version, 3 version, 4, 4.5, all you have, all these versions you can have in a same machine, because your applications, your sites may be supporting different versions. So that is the reason why Microsoft have provided to actually support multiple versions in same server. Now in order to make your site, let's say I have developed my site in 4.0 or 4.5, right? Now you can actually create the site pool. How to create? Now you can right click on this and add an application pool, or if you, by default, whenever you install your .NET version, right, it will automatically get registered with your IIS console if you have already installed, right? Or else if it is not, then make sure you are creating your own. You can see as soon as I created my site, right, you can see it actually created. Now anyway, this is something which I created. Let me just remove this part so that it doesn't confuse. Now you can see you have your default application pool or default website. There are different pools. If you want to create your own pool, let's say you can go ahead and just say my site pool, because this is which is for my site, and you can see you have your different versions 4.0 and 4.2. If you install more, you will get that. Click on OK. Right, now this is your application pool. Now this is mainly to actually make sure that you are actually pointing to the right service or right framework, and your application pools will be automatically started. Right, it will be in started mode, because if your site any of the site have to communicate with any of the framework, then this is the pathway. And if you stop your application pool, your complete sites, whatever you are building on this application pool, will be stopped or will not respond. Now when I say in single application pool, you can have any number of sites, because let's say you have 3 different sites which are using 4.0, right? Then yes, you can actually create one application pool here and you can use it for all 3. Or you can create 3 different application pools which are pointing to the same version, and you can use it. It all depends on how you want to go. But yes, you have a feature to connect, to have a multiple application pools for pointing to same version of your framework, .NET framework. Right? So this is about your application pools. Now let's see how to create a site node in here. You can right click on your site and you have an add website. Now this is your site node you have, right? Now I'm going to create my site as my site. The name is my site. Now you can see as soon as you type your my site, right, you can see your by default your application pool will start creating. But I want to select from application pool whatever I have created. Now let me select my site here. But anyways, it seems the name whatever I'm giving here and here are same. That's the reason why you won't see any change. Right? But I'm using my application pool which is already there, and you have to mention a physical path. Now this physical path is nothing but the path where you have deployed your application. You have C, inetperf, www root, and your my site. So this is the main path where you have actually deployed your site. Now you can see this is the path, and as I said, this is a port right? This is a location where you can actually configure your port. But as of now, you can see there are no other sites which is using your AD port, right? We'll also create one more site which again tries to use AD port, and that site is running. Then we'll see how it actually is going to do it, right? Now you can see binding, whether you want to bind with HTTPS or HTTP. As of now, we'll see the HTTPS, because for HTTPS we have to select a certificate. Let's select HTTP here, right? Now you can see as soon as you create this, right, it will start the site immediately. Now what is starting and stopping? Even for application pool, right, you can see this right hand side, whatever you can see this right is something which is a properties window, like actions you have. You can see you can start a pool, you can stop a pool, right? You can actually set your settings, right? You can remove your pool and all. Similarly, let me add this. Now you can see this is my site. Now as soon as you select your site, you can see again all the options for your site are enabled here. And you can see browse at 80 port, which is a HTTP binding. Now your site is bound to HTTP, and you can see that your site is now pointing to your iNetwork here. Now if you want to cross check, right click on this and go to, or you can go to advanced settings here. At the right side you can see advanced settings. Now you can see your physical path is here on my side. And you can see your binding is your HTTP and it is bounded to your 80 port. That's the main binding. And you can see ID here. ID, this is the advanced settings of your site. ID is nothing but your site ID. Now, if you have multiple sites, right, now your IIS will automatically append your site IDs to each and every of your site, right? Now you don't have to worry about this, because this is applied, or this is something which is automatically, you know, automatically assigned by your IIS for your site, basically. Fine. Now let's keep everything same. But if you want to change anything, make sure you are sure about whatever you change. But yes, this is mainly something which will be taken care by the build administrators, because they work closely with some web servers now, right? But as a developer, it's very important to understand even this deployment part of websites, right? Now here you can see, if you remember in our first class we said there are some scriptings, right? ASP scripting, right? Or you'll have something called inside this, we have your CGI restrictions and all, right? So when you open this, you can see that your versions, some versions are allowed, some versions are not allowed. But the scripting, if your site is not working, which means yes, maybe your these versions are sometimes not allowed. You can see for each there are no, anyways you can't you know deny this, because you can see one version is for 64 framework and one is 32-bit framework. That's the reason why you can see duplicates. It is not the same path anyways. Now let me just say I'm allowing it for my CGI scripting, and I'm allowing it for. So my 2.0 and my 4.0 pools are available. Now as soon as you enable your framework, right, obviously your application pools will be anyways, as they are running already, that will be. Let's say if you want to restart your pool, now you can actually go here, or you can say recycle, or you can say stop and then start. Right? So this is about your secrecy. Now again here, if you select this, you have something called default document. Right? So this default document is something, by default it will be, if you take, see, these are the different combinations. By default we may create default as default.asps, right? Or any HTML. You can also, we know that we can also create HTML page in here, right? Because when I right click on this, add new item, or you can say HTML page directly, right? So these are HTML. So when you say, let's say default default, right? Click on OK. Now you can see this is a HTML page. You can see the extension. Now this will be your HTML, and this will be your main page which will be served on. But anyways, in order to make your default document, right, you have to make that whatever is the first default, it will actually try to pick that, right? So in that way it will actually be. So sometimes in HTML sites we have index as a default. In our .NET we normally make default, right? Or in some website, so normally people use start as a default page, like start.spx or home dot, sometimes home.spx or home.html or home.jsp, right? It all depends, right? And whatever is your home page, you can actually select that, or you can always add. You can add your default document name, right? And you can actually make it to the top, right? When you click on top, few things may change, right? If you continue changes, you can see the parent level will no longer be inherited in this level. So let's not do this, but if you want to make this default, you can always move up, you can see, or if you set this, you can actually move down and move up. So whatever is at the top and it finds that resource, that resource will be rendered for the past. And if you feel that I don't want any document, you can always remove it, because you can always add it to it. That's why you can actually remove, or what you can do, you can, let's say, few times, if you don't want to use this, you can always disable it, right? Disable it, and you can always make it, right? So this is how you can actually set different things here. Now, so let me browse this site. Now either you can click on this browse, right? If you miss some settings, right, or miss some configurations and different things, right, you may get, for the first time you may get this. But you can see your site is running on localhost, right, on AD port. It is trying to search your AD port, and you can see there is an error called HTTP error 4.0 forbidden. Web server is configured to not list content to this directory, right? Anytime you want to restart your server, right? Restart your server. There are different ways how to restart different components. First, you can restart your site. Now to restart, again, you at the right hand side you have restart. Click on that. You can stop and start. Or if you want to stop it temporarily, you can stop this, which you stop surfing, which you stop the surfing of the site, and you can start it again. And if you want to start this complete node of your server, this is your server. You can start or restart your server. It will completely restart. You can stop all the sites, all the resources, everything, and then restart. Or you can always keep your server stopped. When you stop, that's it. Your server is down. Now no one will be able to browse your site. Anything. Check out. Let me open this and localhost. Just a localhost. Right now you can see everything is down, but at least if you start it right, and if you try to browse, it will try to search localhost, but anyways your site contains some issues, that's fine, but it is surfing. This is one way how to restart. Now other way, which is the best way, is to go to console, right, which is your command prompt. Always before restarting anything, try to open your command prompt as an administrator, right, if you're using Windows Vista or above, because in Windows Vista or above you have to, even if you're administrator, right, sometimes you have to use your, before starting you have to use something called run as administrator, open as administrator, so that it will enable all features to you. Now you can see whenever you open any application as administrator, you should always see this part, administrator. Even if you go to Visual Studio, you can see this is running as an administrator. Even if your machine, you are logged in with the administrator, always better to use this, because it will actually open up your application as an administrator mode. Right? Now here you can give a command called IIS reset. Right? When you do IIS reset, now you can see it will stop your site server, all the resources will be stopped, right? And then it will start your internet services. Now when you run it from command prompt, right, and if you are opening your command prompt as an administrator, then you are making sure that everything is stopped, right? Everything is stopped, and then it starts. It actually starts your server, right? So this is how you can actually restart your server node. But yes, if you want to restart your site, you always have an option directly in your console, right? So initially, when I go to localhost, right, now it says your default document is not configured for the requested URL, right? And the directory browsing is not enabled. Now you should not actually enable directory browsing, because if you enable directory browsing, see what happens. Let me go to directory browsing here, and let me enable it. Now my directory browsing enabled, right? Let me come to my site and restart the site and get back to localhost. When I enable, now you can see all the pages I can see. When I click on home, let's say, now I can go. But this is not correct, right? This is something which is not expected. Your intranet sites, yes. For your intranet sites, if you want everyone to see your directories, what exactly are there, yes, you can. But for internet, you should never do it. Why? I can actually read something which should not which should not be right browsed. But anyways, few things may not be, but sometimes it is easy for guys to hack, right? So that's the reason why. Make sure you are actually enabling whenever you need it. Now let's go back to the site. Now when I open now you'll get again something called your default document is not configured. Now let's go back. Let's say I want to keep my home.aspx as default document, right? Select this and go to this default document and click on add and say I want home.aspx as my default. Click on that. Now it will be configured. Now let's go back and refresh this. Now you can see your site is live now. Now you can see your site is live and you can actually start surfing, right? And whatever you enter, as said, it will be shown here. Everything will work as it is, right? So this is something which is your. Now you can see you are able to go across your sites, right? Because you can see here it is still in localhost and you are able to. Now let me open up localhost. A colon and 80 port. It will still work. You can see here because your site is in 80 port, right? Now you don't have to mention your 80 port by default because it will take you to 80 port if you don't mention 80 port. And even if you mention your 80 port there, right, it will make sure, right, it is taken to your host. Now here, let me use the Hub. I go here. Let me just serve, or maybe I think I have to serve to Srinath, just Srinath. Yeah. Actually, I can take my internet enabled. That's fine. It's my configuration issue anyways. Okay. Now you can see that you have access to your site. Now this is something which is a deployment. Now your site is live. So this is how we can actually deploy our sites, right? And sometimes your IIS. Now you can see this is a IIS. I think I'm actually using IIS 7. Right, you can see this is a version mainly. This is a version anyways, but this is a build I'm looking at where I'm using my IIS, which is 7.5. Right, but basically if you're using 7 and above, your console will be same, but if you're using something which is 6, your console may be different. Right? So this is about how we deploy and maintain our sites, right? Using IIS console, right? As I said, if you want to stop your site, you can stop, and if you go back to your site and try to browse any site, you can see now it will say page not found, right? Again, start it again, come back and refresh, right? So this is how we normally do the site settings.